Beautiful. All right. Okay, this is the streets meeting. Today is January 25th, 7 p.m. We have Anastasia, AKA Stacy. On the meetings, do you want to be called, what do you want to be called in the meetings? So everybody is aware.
Stacy. It's so much easier.
Okay, I figured that. I just want to make sure. I know that's what I call you, but want to make sure. Mark Bruger, Mike Flickinger, and then Tiffany Hughes, of course, myself. I know this is your first time, Stacy, so I'll kind of like hit a couple things and then you can take them over as you want, ask the questions that you want. The reason that I wanted to do this particular meeting to start with, this is, and it's also being recorded because I know that there's some people that do want to watch this that are not on here right now. This is a great refresher for, Mark and Brian. I'm going to be honest, I was actually really hopeful that the other ones were the ones on here because this is the most useful information that is going to bring people back to speed of what's going on with the East Shore Court project, or also known as the 2021 Storm Sewer project, where we are, what's going on, why it hasn't, this is Mike's way of kind of doing a refresher for everybody. What's going on with the Jordan Road project? Where are we with you are fully aware of the street analysis that we're getting ready to do, but not everybody else is, and none of the other members. Well, they're going to be voting on it here in the next couple of days. They're actually going to see legislation about it. So, it's really a good way for everybody, and they can actually obviously see this as well. So this is just a great way to know what's going on, why we're not doing certain things and why we are doing certain things. So, Mike, I'm going to flip it to you and kind of let you, I don't want to not say Stacy's leading it, but just kind of lead it and go through. You start where you want. But that's really what this is about. You guys can ask him questions. I just did this meeting with Mike and Leah about 2 weeks ago. So I'm pretty up to speed on most of this, well, obviously, but just ask Mike any questions. And Mike, just, if there's certain things you want to ask him, if they want to talk about right now, it's you guys handle it the way you want to handle it.
Yeah, just bring me up to speed. I guess I'll be junior apprentice this time around, and then we'll kind of.
Perfect.
I'm really good at bossing people around, so I don't have a problem with that later. So.
Okay. What I can do is I had four topics really to discuss today that are sort of the more top of the line topics that are more in the forefront. And then maybe if I introduce each of them and give a brief summary of where we are on them, and then maybe that'll spur some questions, and then we can kind of go into a deeper conversation. Actually, I had 5 topics. I was going to do an introduction because I figured we'd have so many new council members, but I guess I can save all of that information for later. But just as a quick overview, Stacy, just so you're aware of my relationship with the village. My relationship with the village is a little different than, say, Eric's relationship as the planning director, where he has a personal services contract with the village. I actually am employed by Jacobs, and we as a company have an agreement with the village. So I'm not a direct employee or a personal services employee of the village. The reason that's important is because we do everything for the village on a task basis, meaning we have very specific budgets for very specific tasks. And so if there's work that the village wants to be done, we either have to execute a new task order or try to slip that into an existing task order. So it's helpful from a budgeting standpoint, but sometimes it's not as user friendly if we kind of want to go chase something and figure something out. So we can always work through that stuff as we're going through. Personally, I've been working as the village engineer since 2005, I think it is now. So I've outlasted pretty much every council member, every finance director, multiple police chiefs. I've outlasted the fire department. And so I've been around for a while. So I have a lot of institutional knowledge, and as we work through some of these things together, we can talk about how we've done things in the past and maybe how we can approach things differently for the village's benefit. So the first project, I guess, that I wanted to bring up, and the mayor mentioned it, is the 2021 Storm Sewer project. We colloquially refer to it as the East Shore Court project because when the project first started, that's actually was its primary focus, was repairing a storm sewer behind a couple properties on East Shore Court. But as we gathered more information and more data, we added a sewer from the Jordan Road, Park Lane Drive, Park Lane Court kind of curve. We added that into the project. So we just decided to call it the 2021 project. I know council members Bruger and Wolf are familiar with this. This project actually bid around Labor Day 2021.
Mhm.
By the time we worked through the legislation and got everything approved and to enter into an agreement with the contractor approached us and said, hey, supply chain issues. I mean, it's kind of everyone's, I think, sick of hearing about it, but pipe deliveries were running so long that they weren't going to be able to get any pipe after they submitted their shop drawings and got their shop drawings approved. They probably wouldn't receive any pipe until late December. And so we didn't think that was an appropriate time to start construction. It was just going to be extremely difficult to excavate and backfill for the pipe. And then also we have, excuse me, we have some concrete to place, and it would be too cold really to place the concrete. So we worked with the contractor and we worked with the village, and we decided to sort of put that project on hold through the winter. So to give everybody an update of where we are on that, the contractor has submitted their shop drawings. We've been reviewing their shop drawings so that everything is ready for them to start when they're ready to start. We issued them a notice to proceed about 1 week ago, I think, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. And then immediately we're working on a change order to extend the contract. And the reason we issued them a notice to proceed is because they've asked if they could mobilize a little earlier to get their clearing contractor on site to clear some trees so that we make sure any trees that need to be cleared are cleared before any bat season. There's limitations primarily in this area for the Indiana bat. If a tree has an Indiana bat habitat, you generally can't remove that tree from, I think it's April 1st through the end of October. So you like to get all your clearing work done as early as you can. So there's usually a crunch to get those clearing contractors on site. So they asked if the village would be open to having that contractor come out earlier, and the mayor is open to that. So we're coordinating that time frame with the contractor. The contractor is still anticipating mobilizing for pipe installation and the actual main work of the project on March 15th. So that's still the schedule, is that they'd be out there March 15th. The contract duration is 90 days, so they have to be substantially complete by June 13th. So that's generally where we stand with that project. Like I said, we're just working through the paperwork, getting everything ready so that when they're ready to be on site, there's no holdup, they can just go.
So just a big background for me, just so you know, I don't know if this is a conflict of interest or a vested interest, both probably. I'm at 2828 Park Lane. So that white house on the corner with the balcony, I don't know if you know, but that's me. So I'm at like,
yep.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm getting hit with both problems from Berry Lane and maybe from Jordan too. So that's kind of probably a reason why I ran and probably why I want to be on street. So like definitely interested in every possible detail. I'm a very proactive, detail-oriented person. So I want to know all the details, you know, and you can talk about the second thing and I'll kind of jump in about those emails we exchanged too. Or if you want to talk about it, I'll just add my kind of background information or my observations in the second part.
I think it's probably appropriate to talk about those email messages now since it's in that general area, since we're already up there. So I guess if you want to give the background, I read the email messages and I have a general understanding of the concerns up there.
Yeah.
I would say that they're not uncommon.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's just obviously I've noticed it because this is where I live. So my observation is that, well, first of all, my driveway has sunk probably about 4 or 5 inches. So I have a 3 pad for 3 cars. 1 pad basically is, I want to say 5-6 inches off the ground and cracked. So there's settling issues. So I don't know if that's from flooding and drying and flooding and drying or other things. But in that same vicinity, right around that curve, it almost feels like the street has sunk and is wavy too. And there's always standing water right around that curve. So it, at first I was like, well, what the heck, there's debris there. I'm just going to clear it off and see what happens. Like 2 weeks later, the debris is back and it's that standing water. So it seems like the debris is not causing the standing water. The standing water is causing the debris. So I, not an engineer by any means. Probably I can play one on TV, but I don't know if that's helpful at all. So I could just tell you my observations and the critical thinking part of it, which seems like there's a settling issue in that area whatsoever. If somebody's going to come out there and take a look at everything, and they might as well just kind of look at the topography and see if there's a problem, especially if no cost involved.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea to reach out to Resource and ask them to take a closer look at that as part of their pavement condition assessment. We were going to incorporate similar things in different parts of the village, but they kind of got pushed off to the side a little bit. So I think that's a good thing that you contacted them and add that to their list of things to investigate. I think what we would like to do is once we get the information from Resource, we've done some paving work in that area in I can't remember which project it was. It was somewhere between 2009 and 2012. I think we did a paving project up there when we replaced a significant amount of curb and gutter in that area. The intent of that project at that point was really just a resurfacing project rather than a significant reconstruction and a significant pipe replacement project. So I think what we can do is the street project and the sewer project that we're talking about for the 2021 project, they're significantly detached from each other, that there isn't a risk in doing one and then coming back and doing another. They would be two different contractors, and there's a good break point where it wouldn't be we wouldn't be redoing work that we're doing. So I think it's good that we can continue with the 2021 project, collect some additional data, and then maybe if Resources assessment indicates that they see some grade problems, some grading problems, some settling problems, then we can have a follow-on conversation, the village and me as a group, and determine if we want to expend some money and maybe do a little bit more investigation up there and maybe define a project and then perhaps put a price to that project and see what it would cost with a preliminary recommendation. And then we could, then you as the village could take that and look at the budgeting and determine if it's a project that you would want to go forward with.
You're muted, Stacy.
Sorry. I guess what I would want is for somebody at least to look at it and tell me like, hey, this is a result of previous settling issues because of the flooding and the drying, or, what's going on? Like, is it going to resolve itself on its own, or is it not going to continue to get worse? I guess is my, my concern, because my house is basically attached to the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that, but what I would have to do is I would have to talk internally and see what effort would be required for that and what we would want to do with that, and whether it be getting some surveying work too to get some topography information, which we don't do that locally. So we can look at that though.
Yeah, I just, obviously I don't want like a ginormous cost associated with it, but I figured I'd reach out, and if it was free, why not?
Yeah, no, I think that was I think that was good for Resource to reaching out to Resource. I think that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay. So does everybody else kind of agree? Any comments? Everybody understand what's going on? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like information that the village needs. And it sounds like the first step is to include sort of some of that specs in the road assessment that we are moving towards.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think we're going to change course. I don't think this really affects our budget at all. So I don't think that seems to be a big deal.
We don't know what
Because I'm not doing extra work, right?
Budget. It's not as Mike was saying, it's not something just we can send someone out there. It's something that would have to be, what will it cost to send someone out there? Do we want to?
No. I already contacted the surveyors and I talked to them about it, and they said that they would be able to look at it and it would be no extra charge for them to do that. So that, based off of that information, if there is a problem, yes, there would be an additional cost if we deem it necessary. But at this point, it is not costing us time or money.
Which surveyors?
The surveyors you're talking about is the Resources that's doing the road.
Resource International. Yep.
Yes, and they're doing the road. They're the ones that were looking at the road analysis.
Yeah, they're actually performing the pavement condition assessment.
Okay.
And so Stacy reached out to them and just asked, while you're out there, could you take a closer look at this particular problem? And they said, yeah, they added it into their scope, but didn't include any price because they're going to be there anyway. Yeah. And we already asked them to look at the curb and gutter. So.
And it's Resource International, so it's the same people we've had do previous sewer work and got it.
Yep.
And just as an FYI, I personally spoke to I think he's the vice president, Jonathan. He was very accommodating. So I've got it all kind of squared away, but everybody should be on the same page. So that's why we're having this meeting. Sorry, all the rattling.
Okay.
Just Michael, on the stuff you said earlier, so we're exactly where we were at the end of last year with East Shore Court. Do they have, I'm sure you said this and I didn't hear it. Do they have most of their materials in? I know part of the thing was wait and we'll have the materials ready. Do we know if they have them in, or are they just still thinking they'll be in on time?
I think they've placed all of their orders. So
Okay.
they're in the production schedule and in the shipping schedule. And as of this week, they have not expressed any concern about having the materials on time.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just as a point of reference, are they going to come in from the back from Park Lane, or are they coming in from East Shore Court, or both?
They will need to come in through both, but we are going to have a pre-construction meeting with them, and we're thinking we're going to try to schedule that for late February, because they're going to have some access issues. It's pretty tight on both of those properties. The Park Lane Drive side actually is pretty open, just because there's a decently wide access easement that's A, existing on the one property, and B, which is what the village procured at the back end of 2021. Accessing the East Shore Court portion of the project is a little bit more problematic, just because there are more trees in the way, and they actually have to get onto 3 different properties. So what we intend to do is have DJX, that's the contractor, revisit the site, or at least go back to their notes and recommend to us where they prefer to access the site from each side. And then we'll talk to the village and talk to the property owners as needed to see if we have to execute any additional work agreements to maybe get outside of the existing easements, or if we can keep all the work on the easement. Granted, we'll be updating everybody anyway so that the residents know, when people will be on their property, but we want to try to get that in probably mid-February.
Just know all the neighbors are going to be asking me, so.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like me to go on to the 2022 project?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I exchanged an email message earlier this week. I guess this is Tuesday, so yesterday, with the mayor, giving her an update on this project. So where we stand with this 2022 project, and maybe Stacy, I don't know, kind of catching you up to speed a little bit, you might be aware of it. The intent of this project is to make some repairs to the sewers behind the Jordan Road properties. So all of those properties that are on the northern side of Jordan Road, there's some sewer deficiencies. This project goes pretty much all the way west to the Yasmin International Market shopping strip and can extend as far east as almost Park Lane Drive.
Okay, so that whole stretch.
Yeah, it's a significant stretch.
Okay.
We ran our hydraulic models in December, and what we have currently concluded is that the sewers that are there now are significantly undersized,
Okay.
and that rather than the 18-inch diameter sewer, yeah, it's an 18-inch diameter sewer, and then it increases to a 24-inch diameter sewer. We've our preliminary modeling indicates that those sewers should be probably 36-inch diameter, which was not what we expected, because we were operating under the assumption that these sewers were adequately sized. So our preliminary cost estimate to do all of the work that we think would be required to upsize these pipes to 36-inch diameter, our preliminary cost estimate with a significant contingency and, just your sort of 30% level cost estimate was in excess of $1 million. Obviously, that's not a project that the village could go out and write a check to do today. So what we've done is we've kind of pushed pause on the detailed design portion of it because we want to review the modeling and coordinate with the city of Columbus, which we've been trying to schedule a meeting with them for a few weeks, and I think we're finally just about there. We want to talk to them about additional information that they have that we don't have access to. We also want to confirm with them some of their pipe sizes because we're unsure about why some of their pipes are sized the way they are. If we can,
are they bigger? Are they smaller?
The city of Columbus did a project along Cleveland Avenue.
Mhm.
And I apologize, I don't have the drawings pulled up in front of me, but they increased a pipe size from 12 inches to 36 inches.
Okay.
But they didn't add any flow into that. So we're unsure why that pipe is a 36-inch pipe.
Okay.
And if that pipe doesn't need to be a 36-inch pipe, then we think we have a sound basis to probably reduce the size of our pipes. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to coordinate that. We're trying to make sure we haven't inadvertently accounted for flow that's going somewhere else. So we want to confirm with Columbus. We want to check their model, make sure we haven't double counted flows going to the same place.
Okay.
Are we
The
talking
other
secondary or storm here?
This one is storm, 2022 storm.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And then that's the reason my question is, again, neighbor wise, that's the reason we're getting that Jordan River situation and the sinkholes.
Yeah, that's part of it. The main driver there is there's a sewer segment that is just east of the Yasmin International Market shopping strip that is significantly blocked. It's missing a large chunk of the sewer, and it appears what that property owner did was they went one manhole upstream and added their own relief, which dumps onto the ground. So any flow that comes basically from the Ivywood apartment area comes from the west side of Cleveland Avenue. It goes under Cleveland Avenue into the village, and then when it hits this blockage in the pipe that I mentioned, it actually backs up into another manhole and then relieves out along the surface. And that's all that surface water that runs back behind the Jordan Road properties. So this has been a point of contention between the village and the property owner for probably almost as long as I've been working with the village. There's legal aspects to this. There's planning aspects to this. So there are a few pieces to this puzzle. What we've anticipated in our project is basically replacing that segment of sewer that
Okay.
currently legal counsel says is privately owned, but we've accounted for it in our project just in case the village needs to be the one to make that repair.
Mhm.
The other coordination issue that we have with this project is that the sewer segment that we're talking about is right on the boundary of Minerva Park in the city of Columbus. So what you actually have in this situation is flow coming from Columbus into the village, and then from the village back into the city, and then from the city back into the village. So we have to work with the city of Columbus just to get all this sorted out and to see, if there are pipe size recommendations, or if there are recommendations to upsize that pipe, it
Mhm.
wouldn't do any good to bring a 36-inch pipe into the city's 18-inch diameter pipe. So that's another thing that we're trying to coordinate with them. So we're rather than just charge ahead with this, I mean, the 36-inch diameter pipe will work. I mean, we know it will work. It's just
What
it's
it
not
costs.
economically feasible right now. So we're trying to expend more effort on the up front than we originally intended, and there might be a little bit more field investigation that we might need to discuss with the village. We may need some additional survey work across the street to confirm a couple things, but that's a small price to pay versus a $1 million project. So
So like with
we're
that, what are we going to scope it first just to see what's going on? Can you measure the pipe by scoping it? How does that work? TV.
Well, we know all the pipe sizes. We've already had CCTV work over there.
Okay.
So we're comfortable with the pipe sizes that are in place.
Okay.
And we're comfortable with the condition of them, which is really what was the sort of, I think it's fair to say, Mary, you can chime in, but I think it's fair to say that was kind of like the final nail. People have been talking about trying to do things in this area for a long time, and it took multiple efforts to get some quality CCTV work. Through no fault of the CCTV contractor. I mean, they tried multiple times to do stuff. It's just always been so wet that they couldn't do anything. Once we were finally able to get some good CCTV data, I think that was the final nail that made it so the village was able to just say, we have to go forward with this. So.
Okay, so right now, just as a quick update on that, we will be both Eric and Jesse they both are fully aware that we need to try to meet with them this month. We're nearing the end of the month, but without the Yasmin Market or that particular property owner, this project is not
With
gonna.
the property owner now, he recently passed away. So
that's not the only owner. So there's So regardless, there's an owner to that property, and I'll say this on a public record: the village should not have to. From all the information we've received, the village should not have to foot this bill.
Okay.
Now, is it something that we pay for and try to get reimbursement? That would be that may be the way that we have to go, because the residents also shouldn't have to deal with it any longer either. So this is something that we don't want to hinge everything on. We will do our best to get a resolution with them up front, but if not, we'll deal with it on the back end.
Well, yeah,
it's what we talked about.
Like your property value.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 20 houses probably affected.
So just like back up a little bit, because I don't have that background. So we already did this, we already scoped it. So we know where the problem is. So now we need to figure out the flow situation to make sure that our pipes are big enough. And then we need to fix that collapsed storm drain, right? Or sewer drain. I can't keep track.
Yep, you nailed it. We've identified the problems. Now we're working through to figure out the details, and then we'll go through with the detailed design. And what we're trying to come up with is a workable solution that is feasible, it's cost feasible, and it addresses the problem without trying to without trying to replace the entire system. So we're trying to target the areas that need to be replaced. And if we, if we can work with the city of Columbus and we can refine the model and maybe reduce some of the flows, or, like I said, sometimes there are just things that we don't understand how their system works. And maybe they're holding back flow in a certain place that doesn't show up in our model. If we can reduce the flows, then we can significantly reduce the pipe sizes. And if we can do that, then realistically, instead of replacing, from the Yasmin International Market shopping strip all the way, we really only have to replace maybe 2/3 of that or 50% of that. So it would, the cost would go down because of the pipe size decrease, but then B, the cost would go down because we'd reduce the scope of the work by roughly 50% to 33%.
Okay. And then what's our timeline for that?
A lot of it depends on how quickly we can get information from the city of Columbus. So we've been, like I said, we've been trying to set up a meeting with them. Randall in our office is contacting them again tomorrow because we haven't heard from them this week, I don't think. So if we can get some information from them, we've been pretty quick about our modeling. So originally we wanted to try to get this project done in the spring. We wanted to get this project out, bid in the spring so it could be done in the summer. If we can get the information from the city, it probably would take us a couple weeks after that to finalize the model, and then maybe about a month to put the drawings together. So I mean, we're looking at maybe finishing it in late spring, early summer versus bidding it in late spring, early summer. I think the biggest thing we'll have to discuss as a group is once we get to that point where we feel comfortable with the design, and then we can put together an updated cost estimate for the village to consider, then the village is going to have to determine how to proceed with the project. Can the village cover the cost, quote, out of pocket and move forward with it? Does the village need to put aside money for a couple years and then maybe it becomes a 2023 project instead of a 2022 project? There's also, the village has been successful pursuing grants. And so sometimes those grant cycles that the village is on, usually those grant applications are due in the fall. So if the village, I'm just using this as an example, if the village needed to pursue an OPWC grant or low interest loan to fund this project, generally what would happen is that cycle starts in September of the calendar year. So it would start in September 2022. The village would find out pretty much by the end of 2022 if they qualify for a grant or qualify for a low interest loan. And then by the terms of the agreement, if you qualify for a loan or qualify for a grant, you can't get reimbursed for that money until July 1st of the following year. Okay. So you can work with contractors and pay in advance or do other things, but usually in the past, what the village has done is they've bid a project so that it would start construction July 1. So I think today's the 25th. I would like to say that we'd have a good direction on this project by, within 2 months from now. Okay. Hopefully sooner, depending on what information we can get and collaborate with the city.
I appreciate all those answers. It's just, want to get caught up. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay. Tiffany, do you have anything else to add? Like anything that you feel like I need to know?
Sorry, I'm really here. No, I mean, I've done this meeting a couple times already, so I think I'm pretty much good to go on everything that we're doing. Okay. You guys are going to have legislation in front of you for the resource on Thursday. I think it's on the agenda already. I am working with Kim and Leah right now just to verify that the money has been appropriated. If not, you will see that on the appropriation as well. Because there will be an appropriation. You guys are going to see you're going to see the agenda change a couple times over the next 24 hours. So, but that I am working on because I don't think that that's going to be a project you guys are going to stop. So I think we're trying to get all our ducks in a row to get that project moving. So yeah, that's, I don't have anything. I mean, I know next we're going to be talking about whether or not we're going to move forward on some CCTV. We're going to be doing some stuff, and maybe I can get Mike to refresh exactly what he thinks our next steps are with those things.
Yeah.
The next section that we should CCTV, because last year they kind of put a stop on moving forward with several projects. So this is the year I think that we were just going to pick them all up. So other than that, no, I think we're good.
And why was there a stop? I'd like to know. Is someone
We just
in there?
weren't ready to move forward on some of the projects. I think they just kind of wanted to clear off the table and then start fresh with some new ones. I don't have a good answer. Everybody knows that I really tried to keep things moving when we went for continuing to televise each section. But there was 3 things that we were going to do. I think it was starting over with the sanitary. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. We moved forward on the storm, the next section, which is sitting on our plate right now, as to what we're going to fix and move forward on that. And then the sanitary, we're actually due to start over in the village. And we would have started that last year. And I think they decided they wanted to start Jordan Road area for the sanitary this year. So that's going to be left up to you guys if you want to do that. The street analysis is the 3rd thing, and that we've already picked back up within 2 or 3 weeks of being here. So that was the 3rd one. Am I correct about that, Mike? It was the sanitary that we did not move forward on, starting over again?
That is correct.
Okay.
The 4th thing, well, I'll bring up the 4th thing later if you want, but actually the next item I had on my agenda was 2022 CCTV work.
Yep.
So
that's where
it was as if you and I planned this ahead of time, but we did not.
We did not. I just got home, so.
So, as the mayor mentioned, we have 2 concurrent CCTV programs for the village. So there's a CCTV program associated with the sanitary sewer system and a CCTV program associated with the storm sewer system. The village has completely televised their sanitary sewers as of 3 years ago. I think the mayor was on council, so it's before she ran for mayor when we finished the last batch of CCTV work for the sanitary sewer. So to catch everybody up to speed, just in general, Jacobs, we've prepared 2 programs for the village, and they're 7-year cycles, meaning you will get through the entire sanitary sewer system in 7 years, and you'll get through the entire storm sewer system in 7 years. Originally, depending on the size of your community, some communities try to get it done in 5, some try to get it done in 6. Through conversations with the village, just from a funding perspective, 7 seemed to be the most palatable. A 7-year cycle seemed to be the most palatable for the village, just for cost. So I apologize. I'm more Teams based than Zoom based. Okay, I was going to try to share my screen. For the sanitary sewer system,
screen share is bottom middle. You should see.
It says it's disabled.
Oh, yeah. The mayor can fix that.
How do I fix it? Does anybody know?
You got to go into settings somewhere.
I have. Oh, I got all kinds of stuff. Start sharing. Well, that's not me. I don't want to start sharing.
No. In the meeting settings,
I have full screen, keep on top, mute all, stop video, start sharing. Hang on. If I click on that, yeah, I don't think you guys want to see that.
In screen share, so hold on. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a little green shield with a check mark. If you click on that, you get the meeting information. And then in that square, there's a gear that gets you your Zoom settings. Ooh. And then there's a screen share section, and one of those is going to be to enable screen sharing. Did you follow all that?
I did. I'm in here, except it still just tells me enter full screen. Side by side mode, maximum zoom mode, scale to fit shared content for Zoom window, silent system when sharing, and that's under the shared screen. General.
It's not imperative that I share. I was just going to show the sewer map.
I know we need to figure that out, why it sometimes lets everybody do it and why it sometimes doesn't. So we'll do that in the background the next time.
All right.
Okay. So we've prepared a plan for the storm sewer system and the sanitary sewer system, where we've identified which sewers we recommend be part of the program each year, and we've provided in a table the annual budget that we recommend for the CCTV contractor, and then we have a line item in there for engineering services. And what the engineering services include is we take the CCTV contractor's information, we review it, we assign condition scores and assign priorities to each sewer segment. We generate a table / miniature report for the village, and we make recommendations as to the steps to address any deficiencies that we see. We generate a preliminary cost for that, a preliminary construction cost for that work, and then we give that to the village so that you can decide if you want to go forward with a project in an upcoming year. Also, as part of that work, we update the GIS for the village, meaning we go in and we update the information that's attached to each sewer segment. We update the date, the year that it's been televised and cleaned. We update the condition, we update the priority, and then we further update any work that has been done to it in that year. So all of that is included in our engineering costs. So what we had recommended, we put this report together in August 2021. So for the 2022 program year for the sanitary sewer, we recommended the village budget about $30,300 for the CCTV work and the cleaning work, and then an additional $9,000 for engineering services to do all the things that we just discussed, for a total program budget of basically $39,250 is what we had. So for 2022, we are recommending 6,300 feet of sewer be cleaned for the sanitary. And that area is actually, it's primarily in the Minerva Lake Road. Let me make sure I have my colors right. 2022. Actually, the 2022 would be starting in the golf course development on the sanitary sewer. We don't anticipate there being any problems in there, but those sewers are now about 6 years old. So that's why we wanted to start there and then jump back up into Jordan Road and work our way back down like we used to. So 2022 is almost exclusively within the golf course development. So it's Green Line Way, Farview, Woodbine, I think, all of those streets in there, 6,300 feet. What we would recommend, well, let me go through the storm first. And then, because my recommendations for timing will be the same for both of them. Similar to the sanitary sewer, we've recommended a 7-year cycle based on communications with the village. So for 2022, we're recommending about 4,400 feet of storm sewer be cleaned and televised. That's the contractor budget price of a little more than $21,000, and then another $9,000 for the engineering services. And that comes out to be a program cost of about $30,000 for the storm sewer. So really budgeting about $30,000 this year for the storm sewer and budgeting, I think I said about almost 39, little more than 39,000 for the sanitary sewer. The storm sewer area that we're recommending be televised, again, let me make sure I get the colors correct, is the areas where we really haven't done a whole lot of televising yet. So it's a lot of the Lakewood Drive area, a lot of Alder Vista Drive, a lot of Maplewood, basically I would say the eastern half of those streets as they come together and go toward the golf course, and then a little bit on the Maplewood as it runs in the north-south direction. That's the primary focus for the 2022 program. So what we would recommend for the village is, if you remember, I mentioned the OPWC funding earlier. We try to look at these sewer projects with an OPWC schedule. So if that program application generally starts in September, we'd like to know if the village has a project in mind late summer, meaning we'd like to do the analysis midsummer to early-ish summer, and then meaning we'd like to get the CCTV work done late spring, early summer, so that they can get the work, we can observe it, or we can analyze it, we can come to the village and we can say, you know, hey, these sewers need to be repaired. If you don't have the money available to do it out of pocket, now at least you're on the funding schedule, so you could make a grant application and then do the project the following spring. That's generally how we try to do it. If we miss that funding window and you can't afford to do a project, but you do want to do it, the project almost lags 2 years because you can't afford to do it. So I know this is, we've had these discussions before, but I think they're important. And that is, if we do a sewer inspection in 2022, but we do it too late in the year, and then you want to do a project, but you can't afford it, and you need to go for a grant application, then you don't get to go to the grant application until the end of 2023. And then you don't get to spend that money until 2024. So it becomes a 2-year lag. So that's why we've been trying to encourage the CCTV work getting pushed earlier into the calendar year, so that if there is a project, you're on a good cycle. You figure it out, you do your project, you do it next year. So I would recommend, yeah.
Sorry, I have a couple questions about that. When you apply for that grant, do you have to have a specific number in mind, or can we just proactively apply for it before the CCTV work is done, anticipating something? It's not like just a broad number. You have to have a specific.
You have to have an actual project in mind. It has to have a name. It has to have a engineer's estimate attached to it. And then you have to submit some useful life spreadsheets and things like that. So you kind of have to know the definition of the project so you can fill out the worksheets correctly.
Thank you.
Yep. So I guess if I were, well, not if, because I am, since I'm making this recommendation, I would recommend we try to get as early as possible approval or appropriations set aside to do that work. We like to do the scope. We like to scope the work as part of our engineering fee. So we can sometimes do that under the Village Engineering Services Agreement. It just takes money away from that task, which we try not to do if we can avoid it, because we like to reserve it for things like streets committee meetings, council meetings, miscellaneous things that pop up. But depending on timing, we can often do a work without authorization, which is basically the mayor gives us written approval that, yeah, please go ahead and start while we fix the paperwork and things like that. So my recommendation is if it's in the budget, which that's partly why we tried to do this update in August so that you can budget it at the end of the year, so it'll follow through for the following year. Hopefully this is in the budget. So I would recommend we put together scopes of work and solicit pricing from the contractor at spring this year if we can.
I have one, probably, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I assume that all of the other parts of the village were scoped before we moved on to the golf course section because it's the newest section. Like, to me, that's lowest priority. Is that correct?
From a sanitary sewer perspective, yeah, we have done all of the village. It's just from the cycle perspective, those sewers are now basically 5 to 7 years old. So they would be when we would want to get them into the cycle. A lot of times you can wait up to 10 years. And, you know, I mentioned it earlier, we don't foresee any problems there, but we want to keep a logical schedule through the village. So what we try to do is we try to go upstream to downstream. And so if we put it off too late, it kind of would throw off the whole schedule. So we've analyzed everything already. If we do the golf course in 2022, then when we go back up to Jordan Road in 2023, that will have been, I think, 7 years since we were there. So we'd be right on our 7-year cycle. And also, what we're actually trying to do the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer kind of opposite directions. Okay. We had this conversation with the mayor, I think like 2 years ago, maybe. And so rather than chase them through the village, so what would happen is, say the Jordan Road area gets sanitary sewers in 2022, and then they get storm sewers in 2023, and then they don't see anything for 6 more years. We wanted to kind of go logically, but we wanted to take the storm sewers, since they're sort of their own animal. We wanted to go the opposite direction so that village residents would see something happening on their street every 3 or 4 years rather than every 7 years. So it just kind of, you know, it's good that they see we're working through this and there's a regular update happening on their street.
Yeah, I agree. Makes sense. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anybody have any questions about the CCTV program / recommendations for this calendar year?
Nope. Well, I'm sure we'll still have to appropriate, but I seem
to
recall we usually budget for doing that every year.
Yep. Yeah, I think you typically do. Okay. The next item on my list then was the pavement condition assessment, which we touched on earlier when we were talking about the storm sewer project up in the Park Lane Drive area. But I guess just in general, does anybody have any questions or comments about what we're what our goal is for that effort and the history of it?
I mean, I would like to get a little bit more history on that too, because I just read the contract, obviously, but and what I know, my general knowledge is that there's some curves that are just like crumbling, I guess, as far as I know, and there's some pavement condition issues, but I would like some background on that.
Yeah, so the decision to do a pavement condition assessment actually came out of conversations with the village in 2015, roughly. When you pursue some of these grants, it's a little more ammunition in your application to have additional information other than just, we want to replace this street. If you can produce a document that says we've analyzed this and this street has a condition grade of X, that's why we want to replace it or repair it. So it was driven by trying to beef up the applications when we submitted them. So the first pavement condition assessment throughout the village was done in 2016. Jacobs, at that time, we were CH2M Hill. We hadn't been purchased by Jacobs yet, but we actually can do this work. We have the staff that can do this work. but our staff to do this work isn't in Central Ohio. So we approached the village and said we would recommend finding a local contractor to do this that's more cost effective for the village. So Resource is I mean, we work with Resource International all the time. And they're a very good firm. They do this work pretty regularly. So we reached out. They were selected to do the work. They did the first assessment in 2016. And Stacy, if you haven't seen what that assessment looks like, I can send you the assessment from 2016.
Yeah, would you send that to me? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no problem. So basically what they do is they go through the village and they have equipment. They have a truck that has I think it's kind of like a ground penetrating radar attachment. They go through the village, and for each street segment, so basically from intersection to intersection, they analyze the pavement. They look at the rutting. They look at cracking. They look at undulations, and then they do a little bit of ground penetrating radar to check pavement thicknesses, and then using an ASTM standard that's accepted throughout the country, and it's a very regulated procedure, they assign a score for that pavement segment from 0 to 100. And then just like your letter grades, those things fall into an A, B, C, D, F. And what it lets you do is then it lets you take that report and say, hey, we thought we might have had some problems on Minerva Lake Road, but the pavement's all grading out in the high 80s or low 90s. So we don't need to target our money there, but we were going to, but it sounds like we don't need to. But over here, this pavement is scored as an F, which is, a failing pavement. That's where we should focus our attention. So it allows the village to more, I guess, maybe do a better job of optimizing your spending for the streets projects. They also, as part of the scope, will look at curb and gutter, and they'll make some recommendations about curb and gutter and what needs to be replaced and where. One of the biggest challenges we have within the village is that not all of the village has curb and gutter. And we're relatively confident that some of the sections of the village that don't have curb and gutter actually do have curb and gutter. They're just buried, and they've just been buried over, by years of, rather than say milling pavement and replacing pavement, they just put pavement on top of pavement, or they put slurry seal, and they've just built up, and the curbs are there. They're just not visible anymore, and they're not functioning as curb and gutter. So the curb and gutter is a challenge within the village, just because it's not, I mean, curb and gutter needs to go somewhere. So, if you have an area of the village that doesn't have curb and gutter, based on our experience in the village, it also doesn't have storm sewers. So everything just surface flows or goes into people's yards. And so, when you get into a situation like that, if someone says, hey, Minerva Lake Road doesn't have curb and gutter, and we want Minerva Lake Road to have curb and gutter, well, then it's, curb and gutter and sewer. And it becomes a pretty significant project. So we've tried to be, on previous street projects, we tried to be pretty targeted with our curb and gutter replacement, because it can add up pretty quickly. But we know that those were conscious decisions made in the late 2000s, like 2008, 2009, where it was the village wasn't as, I don't think were as financially stable. They didn't have the same amount of money in the accounts that they do now. The grant applications, I think the village has become a higher performer in the grant application process. I think the last 2 grants the village has pursued, one of them actually, the village was the highest scoring application, which that I've never seen that happen in the village in the time I've been there. So I think the village is in different financial footing now, and knowing that, and then knowing some of those conscious decisions that were made in the like I said, 2008 to 2010 timeframe, there are some areas of the village that definitely need some curb and gutter improvements. The trick is, how do you go about doing that? And do you combine it with a streets project? Is it a project by itself? A lot of larger communities have regular annual maintenance projects that they just release a project and it just says, we're going to do a bunch of things this year, give us a price. And then they just meter them out throughout the year. And they say, hey, in this part of the city, we're going to replace all the curb and gutter on these 3 streets. And contractor just comes in, demos all the curb and gutter, puts it back in, and they might not even do a road project. So I think there's probably a wider ranging, more in-depth conversation to be had with the village curb and gutter situation and the street situation. And we've kind of had some preliminary discussions about that. We actually gave the village a task order to look at a street that has a failing grade over at the intersection of Maplewood and Cleveland Avenue. And as part of that, task, we actually proposed, at the village's request, we proposed looking all the way down Maplewood to Briar Rose, and maybe even as far as Alder Vista, to look at the curb and gutter in that area, and maybe define a project to see what we wanted to do over there. So it didn't go forward. The task order wasn't approved, and so it's just sitting there right now. So I think what I would recommend is if you're interested in maybe pursuing a curb and gutter project, we can take some of the information from the resource assessment that they're going to be doing, and we can do some visual, just go out and say, yeah, that area needs to be replaced. And we could define some projects and get some preliminary cost estimates, and then see if the village wants to go forward with them.
So that just would be Resource International coming out separately with that, or could they tack that on, or how does that work?
They are looking at the curb and gutter as part of the scope of work.
Okay. So if there isn't one, would they just say, hey, this needs a gutter here, or like?
No, they're not scoped to make any recommendations.
Okay.
They're scoped just to provide assessment.
Okay.
So using that Maplewood Drive project as an example, the way we wrote the task order was to do that type of work. So basically to come out in that area and say, hey, based on what's here, either no, curb and gutter wouldn't be necessary, or yeah, we recommend adding curb and gutter because the rest of the street has curb and gutter. And then, here's what it would cost to do project A, project B, or project C. That's just an example of one where we talked about it.
So,
and I could send you that scope of work just so you could see what we were considering, so you could just maybe get a feel for the workflow and the kind of like the methodology.
Yeah, I'm not as well versed in that, so I need your guidance with that and see like what's going on. And I mean, would we know that is it important information to know that they did have curb and gutter and it's just buried? Like, I guess, or do we just build a new curb and gutter where we think we need one?
It's important only insofar as how it could potentially affect construction. You would just want to know if stuff is there, because that's generally more, removing that. If the contractor thinks he's just digging into grass and then all of a sudden he's having to bust out a bunch of concrete, that's a different story. It's also just nice to know, if it's there, then maybe there's an opportunity to do some additional work to, like, basically things were set up for it.
Okay.
But whether it's there or not wouldn't change anybody's decision. I don't think. It's just more making sure if it went to a construction project that they have enough information to properly bid the project.
Okay. Makes sense.
If memory serves from the last pavement assessment, that intersection, Maplewood, Cleveland was the only failing pavement we had. Right. And then I'll also say that just to go back and review, you'd said it helps you direct your money. We had, when we started with the pavement assessment, we had assumed that Alder Vista was our worst pavement in the village, and it was nowhere near the worst. So it is a good thing to have and gives you good information. But we also didn't do a single paving project beyond patch and fill since the last one.
Yeah, I think you are correct in that that's the only sort of, I don't want to call it a public street, but I think there was one more failing pavement, and that's the road back to the swimming pool.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right.
I think that was, but as far as like out in the village, that definitely, everything else, I mean, in all seriousness, everything was pretty well scored. And like you said, Brian, I mean, I can't remember if you were on council or had just come on council after it happened, but we had a project on Alder Vista where we basically had to shut the paving project down because what they encountered was not what we thought would be there. And we looked at completely rebuilding that road in the middle of the project. We talked to the paving contractor and talked to our paving people and decided that while that would have been the ultimate solution, the village couldn't afford it, especially like at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And we did expect Alder Vista to be like Brian said, pretty much the worst performing pavement, and its condition assessment score was pretty high actually. So it's a useful tool, especially when you're trying to, I mean, not that any community is just throwing their money around, but when you're really trying to work within a limited budget, it's a very useful tool. Those were all the items that I had on my list. So I'm not sure if you collectively have other things that you wanted to discuss, follow-up questions. I'm ready for them. Well, I'll try my best, I should say, to answer them.
My brain's full. I would think we'd do better to come back at it another time so we can digest all of that. In my opinion, my brain is full.
I feel like I feel like every time I meet with you guys that I throw about 7 different projects at you, and then everyone's like, "Can we just send them home?"
Now you know why we don't invite them to council meetings.
Well, that's the pluses and minuses of saving you for big dumps, right? Like it saves your time, but when you come, it's a big dump, yeah. Right? But we can't book you for 15 minutes for a council meeting, right? That's just not how that works.
Yeah, and there was a time, I mean, remember even on your first spin through council where I was asked to come each month. And yeah, when I first joined, you were there on the regular, and then one of the persons on council who argued over, the misspent nickel decided that it was better to, let you come less regularly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I just, as I've told the mayor, usually what I do is I go the next day, I go to your Facebook page and I pull up the meetings and I listen to them while I'm working. So I can still kind of stay up to date, but then you don't have to have me there. So
glutton for punishment.
That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you really want to go back and watch that?
Hey, so oftentimes it's quite entertaining. So
it's free reality TV.
Funny, not funny.
I know.
Anything else said? I'm not sure who's chair around here to call things.
Stacy.
I'm chair. So as long as we don't have any other questions, I think I got it all. I think I would need like a summary email, but I think I'm pretty up to date with everything. Sorry for all the questions, but I just want to make sure that I have everything, all the information straightened out. I guess that's it. Tiffany, I'm still gonna have like questions for you, obviously.
Exactly.
But other than that, anybody else have anything to add? Questions, comments, concerns?
Nope, move to adjourn.
Okay, I'm gonna move to adjourn. That's it. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
Mike,
Yeah,
super
everybody,
nice to
have a
meet
good
you.
day.
Nice meeting you, Stacy. You guys have a good evening.
Yep.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Mike.